Greetings, Starfighters! Welcome to the next episode of Shameless Cashgrab. Today's episode is going to be for the 1980 movie The Hearse, starring Trish Vanderveer, Joseph Cotton, and Donald Houghton. I mentioned at the end of the previous episode that I was going to look them up, and I did, and nothing particularly of note, I think most of you would know. Well, okay, I mean, Joseph Houghton did do a lot of work in a lot of movies and TV over his career, but none of his roles, none of the names of the characters particularly stood out to me. It seems mostly character work. He was in, like, Citizen Kane, The Third Man, stuff like that. And, Donald Houghton, he actually played Bajoran Monk in the pilot episode for Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which was actually his last acting job before he died. So, yeah, I don't really know much about the movie yet, obviously. You know, these video portions are recorded before I see the movie. But, you know, plot seems pretty basic based on the description on the back of the box. So, at the very, you know, even if it's not good, it's still probably going to be better than My Mom's a Werewolf. But you'll find out if I think so in a few moments.
Alright, here we are, episode 5 of Shameless Cashgrab. Finally. I wanted to get this out a little sooner, but I really hate this summer. Anyway, like I said in the intro, talking about the 1980 movie The Hearse. But before I get into that, let me just go ahead and give you the plot summary, courtesy of Yield IMDb. A woman is haunted by a phantom hearse, which she believes is connected to her departed aunt, a witch with a bad reputation in town. Like many plot summaries I've read on this show, that one is slightly misleading, but I digress. The movie starts with our main character, a teacher, named Jane Hardy, about to go on summer break. She decides, against the advice of a douchey therapist that resembles a pudgy Stephen Wright, to take a vacation somewhere people don't really know her at a house that used to belong to her aunt, as mentioned in the summary, so she can deal with her recent divorce and the death of her mother. During a driving at night scene that reminds me a little of the opening of Mulholland Drive, we actually do see the titular hearse at about 6.5 minutes in. Not a bad wait time. It's very brief, and played during some mostly decent tense music. Not a great scene, but it sets the tone pretty effectively with a slight amount of effort. That still didn't sound right, but I'd originally written minimum in my script. Oh. Now you see why I changed it to slight. Anyway, let's just move on. That doesn't set me at ease just yet, though. The decent shot. I mean, remember how My Mom's a Werewolf started with a pretty decent long take shot? Probably the one good bit of camera work in that entire piece of... Negative out. Positive in. Okay. But the tension is broken almost immediately as the hearse sideswipes the teacher's car while the music reaches a crescendo that is totally not similar to the psycho music at all. No. At least not enough to get sued. But, you know, all this movie has to do, really, is be better than My Mom's a Werewolf. Anything more than that is just icing. So after a bit of an idiot ball moment, which unfortunately this movie has a lot of, she gets to a gas station, sees a creepy guy in a cowboy hat, making this the second movie I've seen this month to have a creepy guy in a cowboy hat. What a weird theme. She calls up for someone from a payphone, and yes, I'm old enough to remember what those look like. To bring her the keys to the aforementioned aunt's house. Why she didn't have them already? Who knows? Luckily she doesn't have to wait long, and some guy comes by and has her follow him to the house to let her in. Sadly, he's not the amusingly creepy old man like we had in Pulse. But something that every good horror movie really should have is a creepy old man. But when she gets to the house, we get a pretty blatant example of meaningful piano sting. When you watch this movie, and yes, I'm saying when, I'll get to that, you're going to be hearing that a lot. I would suggest making it part of the drinking game. Just make it a sip instead of like a full shot, or you'll kill your liver. But this one is particularly silly, as it goes from Jane looking at a picture of her aunt when she was younger to a tight close-up on the same photo. It was such a blatant shot, I actually chuckled a little bit. I mean, all that was really missing from the picture was a blinking neon sign over it that said, "This is important to the plot." No, after this we get something that might have been spooky, had I not seen too many horror movies as a kid and become jaded. A music box starts playing itself. That's not the spooky part. See, it starts playing itself, but turns itself off when Jane turns the light on in what ends up being her bedroom when she settles into the house. The way she smiles when she sees it, and let's ignore for the moment the fact that it played itself somehow despite not being open when she turned the light on, should have been a red flag that something is weird. We get that this box means a lot to her. Which, of course, is why we only really ever see it again a couple of times. And she never really talks about it. So she moves the box to from the dresser to the table by her bed. And you know what? Props. Good scene. Says a lot without any dialogue. It establishes that the box is important to her without her having to say anything. It's only in hindsight that it becomes silly. But, you know, she wakes up and suddenly the box is back on the dresser. Ooh, you know, nice way to set up that things aren't as they seem. Effective. Not particularly spooky, but, you know, again, I'm jaded. Not the movie's fault. And believe me, this movie had a lot of problems, but that's not one of them. Less effective, though, is how quickly Jane shrugs the whole thing off. I mean, maybe deciding that she misremembered moving it before going to bed after she's fully awake, okay. But reaching that conclusion when she's had her eyes open for all of a minute? No one is that coherent when they just wake up. No one. You know, and from there we go on to a jump scare with the front door, a jogging scene. Jane gets catcalled by a couple of rednecks, one of whom is played by Christopher McDonald, a.k.a. the bad guy from Happy Gilmore, and the sudden love interest in the Next Generation episode Yesterday's Enterprise. Phone company guy has a porn stash. I don't know why that stands out. Actually, no, wait, I do know why, but I'll get to that in a moment. We get another jump scare, the form of Jane seeing a younger version of her aunt in the reflection of the window she's cleaning, and almost falls off the ladder as a result. Then we get to the hardware store owner and his wife being dicks to Jane for no particular reason, but especially once they hear what house she's moved into. All this while his 30-year-old teenage son, Dawson casting in full effect, seems completely oblivious. I mean, obviously we're going to get some exposition at some point about people in the town thinking the place is haunted or cursed or some shit, you know. But how does a local kid in air quotes, because again, 30, clearly 30, how does he not know that? In these small towns, aren't the teenagers usually the ones spreading these stories? You know, for that matter, why did the guy who brought her the keys, who said he'd been looking out for the house for 30 years, not say anything? I mean, especially, as we find out later, he really wants this house. So you'd think he'd be the first one to mention this. But so far, nobody has actually told her this yet. They're just reacting weird when she says where she's living. Anyway, I need to try and condense as much as what happens for at least the rest of this act as possible, because this is supposed to be like a review, not a recap. But, I'm sorry, I have to talk about this part, though. I really do. So while she's at the hardware store, you know, the son, who's being really nice to her, seems to be the only person in town we've met so far who's nice to her, says that she knows a guy that she can hire to help fix up the place. So Jane goes to see the guy, who happens to be tending horses. You know, rancher, got it. She asks if he can help, and she mentions the name of the place, same way she did to the hardware store couple. The Martin place, I think, because for some stupid reason I forgot to write that part down in my notes. But I am not making this up, I swear. The horses react. I don't even know I can sell how funny this scene is just by describing it. But the horses react in time with yet another meaningful piano sting. But, you know, that was a bigger laugh than anything I got out of, well, actually any movie so far in this set. I mean, except for maybe some of Ernie Hudson's lines in Space Hunter. But I mean, I was like, she says, like, yeah, I moved into the old Martin place, and all the horses are like, whoa! I can't even do it justice. It was so funny. Yeah, it's actually a shame that this movie wasn't supposed to be a comedy. But when it comes time to rank the movies on this set, and oh yeah, by the way, between the last episode and this one, I decided I'm going to do a follow-up episode after I review the last movie, where I'm going to rank the movies in the set. But this movie could have taken the lead for best movie in the set just for that scene alone. It was so funny. I mean, of course, the downside to that is that this is, again, supposed to be a scary movie, and it is just impossible for me to take it seriously after that moment. So, you know, the hearse shows up again randomly, but, you know, at this point, I'm starting to lose my investment in the movie, except for the funny. But, you know, still better than My Mom's a Werewolf. I swear I'm not going to bring up My Mom's a Werewolf in every single review from here on out. I promise. Although we do get the scene where the hardware store owner's son comes to the house to be helpful, especially after the rancher guy doesn't pan out. And, okay, I'm probably giving away a little too much information about myself here, but I doubt I'm the only one to see this movie and not notice how a lot of early 80s porn movies have scenes like this leading into the sex stuff. This is what prompted me to say on Twitter, I don't know if you follow me on Twitter at all, but the day I was watching this movie, I tweeted out that this movie was like an 80s porn movie with the porn taken out and jump scares added in. So it's like, we get more of the cheap jump scares, weird stuff happening in the house, yada yada yada. We meet the non-Catholic minister who's dressed like a Catholic priest because for some reason Hollywood seems to think that all Christians are Catholics, and it's like, I'm an atheist and I know that. But, yes, we have Reverend Dollar Store Angus Scrim, which I call him that because he totally looks like the actor you'd call if Angus Scrim had turned you down, back when Scrim was still alive, anyway. So Jane finds her aunt's diary in the attic, the hearse makes its third appearance, and this was where I actually started to really notice how just incompetent the main character is, and I was about to check out. I mean, I was going to watch the rest of the movie, of course, because I have to for this show. But, I was just going to just kind of coast, not bother taking notes, just, write in the script, and this is where I gave up, skip to describing the end, do the Stranger Things comparisons, all that. But then it gets even sillier. I know. We meet the sheriff, who turns out to be a moldy jizz rag, same about as everybody else in this town. The hearse driver kind of looks like an evil Peter Sellers in Pink Panther. Runs her off the road for a second time. And then we get a new character named Tom. I'm sorry if I'm stumbling a bit through this review. I waited a little too long between watching the movie and recording the review, and that's on me. And I'm sure this episode's going to be pretty weak, but then again, I'm not exactly SF Debris to begin with. So we meet Tom, who I think our first hint that Tom is obviously being set up as either a villain or a red herring is when we see him staring longingly at the aunt's picture while meaningful piano music played. There is a lot of meaningful piano music in this movie. I don't think I've mentioned that. Tish. Yeah, I mean, I was honestly worried that this was going to turn into an attempted rape scene. I'm certainly glad that didn't happen. But, you get some slasher movie style camera work, which would be fine if this was actually a slasher movie, but, So Jane eventually gets on a boat with Tom, and, of course, hard not to think of Fredo and The Godfather with that one, but, yeah. Although, to be honest, I think Fredo Corleone is actually smarter than Jane. But, the only reason I knew she wasn't going to die in the boat is because she's our only protagonist and the movie's barely half over. Although I would have given the movie points if they'd actually killed her off there. That would have been a curveball. And then, we get another laugh. Okay, I'm sorry, I was about to jump ahead to where it really gets fun. But before we get there, we get to the part we get to Jane reading her aunt's diary out loud. For some reason, I guess the makers of this film had never heard of internal monologue. Voiceover. She's reading the diary and she learns that her aunt had a lover that she left her minister fiancé for, and that the lover wanted her to make a pact with Satan. Yes, really. This is another one of those scenes that has to be seen to be appreciated, honestly. Now, at this point in the review, you're probably wondering one of three things. 1, is Arkle getting enough water? 2, how stupid is Jane? And 3, is he about to tell us that this is a so bad it's good movie? Let me answer those questions in reverse order. No, because this movie is not so bad it's good. It is so crazy it's good. The second one, I already forgot what the second one was because the heat. And the first one is, yes, I'm actually drinking quite a lot of water, but thank you for your concern. But it was moments like that, the line where she reads out loud her aunt's lover wanting her to make a pact with Satan, that I kind of wish that this was a more traditional internet review show, because that would have been the perfect place to put in the Dana Carvey church lady line, you know. Could it be Satan? Hacky? Yes. But, you know, how many opportunities like that in life does one really get? Well, sadly, this is not that kind of show. Probably for the best. The last thing I want to be seen is as yet another Nostalgia Critic ripoff. But after that bit of hilarity, the hearse shows up, and the music tries to be spooky, but I cannot take the tension seriously at this point. Actually, I haven't been able to take the tension seriously since about the thing with the horses. But I can't help but marvel at the irony that this horror movie is exponentially funnier than the comedy movie that preceded it in the set. So Jane goes on to demonstrate survival skills that are about on par with Captain Jonathan Archer, and runs after the car with an axe while wearing a nightgown. And then, out of nowhere, she just drops the axe and just sort of float walks into the back of the hearse while her dead aunt looks at her from a second-floor window. Yes, really, I swear I was sober while I was watching this. The hearse takes her to the local church, and this was the moment. This was the moment when this movie went from being just amazingly bad to amazing. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not a good movie. At all. I'm not even sure it's quite as riff-worthy as Space Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone was, but this is just a level of insanity that truly needs to be seen to be appreciated. And it's made all the more hilarious with the utter sincerity that everything is being delivered with. I mean, the makers of this movie clearly wanted you to be scared in much the same way that Tommy Wiseau wanted The Room to be poignant. I think it's this point I'm deciding I'm not going to spoil any more of the movie for you. I mean, for starters, I feel like you'd think I was making a lot of it up if I tried. And I'm not even going to reveal what happens with the hardware store owner's son or Christopher McDonald. Did you forget he was in this movie? I kinda did for a while, too. But the rest of this nun-fuckery, you have got to see it for yourself. I cannot do it justice. It is pants-on-head nanners, and it is hilarious to watch. It really is. So if you can get it, if you can find a copy of this movie somewhere, get it, watch it. Just go in expecting it to be incredibly stupid. And be aware that about the first 33 minutes or so is actually a relative slog. There's some of the crazy stupid in there too, but not as much as the rest of the movie, when it just goes off the rails in just a spectacular fashion. And with that, the Stranger Things similarities section. We have a protagonist who is divorced, much like Winona Ryder's character in Stranger Things. The two characters' names even have the same first initial. Yeah, I know, it's a stretch. But I guess you could argue that the small town Jane goes to... Blackwood? I should have written that down. But it's a little like Hawkins, the town of Stranger Things, I guess, if you squint. And if just about everybody in Hawkins was an asshole. Final verdict. I've pretty much already said it. You have to see this movie. Again, a bit of a slog for the first third or so, but once the batshit crazy starts, it becomes just one of the most unintentionally funny movies I've ever seen. I specify the unintentionally part because obviously a good comedy that was meant to be a comedy is going to be leagues better than The Hearse, just by any stretch of the imagination. Now, while My Mom's a Werewolf was stupid in ways that hurt, The Hearse is stupid in ways that entertain, like I said. So, that, while there is some legitimately well-shot scenes to bolster its totally arbitrary score, it currently holds the top spot for Best Movie of the Strange Things set, taking the slot away from Pulse. Let's see if it has any competition for that spot from our next movie, the 1988 film Lurkers, a movie that in fact is not about the homeless population of Babylon 5.